on her Caribbean honeymoon. That's on Lorraine at 9. Alison's back with a bake-off start on This Morning at 10. And Loose Women have a lunchtime chat with Nikki Campbell at 12:30.
Good evening. We come on air tonight with some important news about the health of the King. Buckingham Palace has just announced that King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. The palace says it was picked up during his recent visit to hospital for a procedure on his prostate. The King will stand down from royal duties in public whilst he undergoes treatment and says he hopes to return as soon as possible. So here is that statement in full from Buckingham Palace. And it reads as follows. During the King's recent hospital procedure for benign prostate enlargement, a separate issue of concern was noted. Subsequent diagnostic tests have identified a form of cancer. His Majesty has today commenced a schedule of regular treatments, during which time he has been advised by doctors to postpone public-facing duties. Throughout this period, His Majesty will continue to undertake state business and official paperwork as usual. The King is grateful to his medical team for their swift intervention, which was made possible thanks to his recent hospital procedure. He remains wholly positive about his treatment and he looks forward to returning to full public duty as soon as possible. His Majesty has chosen to share his diagnosis to prevent speculation and in the hope that it may assist public understanding for all of those around the world who are affected by cancer. OK, so that is a statement from Buckingham Palace. Our correspondent Rachel Younger is there for us now. And Rachel, this news just released in the last few minutes. What more do you know?
Yes, that's right. And of course, it is so shocking, isn't it? Not least because it was only in the past week that the King emerged from treatment at the London clinic, where he had been looked after, having had an enlarged prostate. We were told by the Queen just last week that he was recovering well. And indeed, at that point, that was exactly what was happening, because the palace are making it clear this is not prostate cancer. They are not going to give us any further details about his condition aside to say that, but they have made it clear that the King has been really encouraged by the support he has received over the past couple of weeks since he was first ill, encouraged too by how many men who were affected by that same condition had gone to the NHS's website to find out more. And we understand that as a patron of a number of cancer charities, he felt it was important to share this news too. Although, of course, it was only 9 months, wasn't it, till he stood on the balcony behind me being crowned king. And this will be immensely difficult for him, I think, because he made it clear, didn't he, that what he wanted to do was offer the country some stability in a time of turbulence, both domestically and internationally. And this makes it difficult for him to do that, not least, of course, because it comes at a time when his son, Prince William, is also taking a step back from royal duties because his wife, the Princess of Wales, is recovering from abdominal surgery. So in terms of who will take on those public duties that he won't be able to do, it will fall largely, we understand, to his wife. She continued with her duties last week, even as he was recuperating, opening a cancer help centre just on Friday at the Royal Free Hospital in London, at a point where we understand she knew about his diagnosis but wanted to continue with that work. And that is the message coming from the palace tonight, that they will continue with as many duties as possible. Despite her wish to be by her husband's side, the Queen will continue with all of her royal duties, is our understanding at the moment. And the King himself, despite the need to be treated, and he has come back to London, we understand, from Sandringham, where he spent the weekend, so he can receive some outpatient treatment so that can begin. he still hopes to be able to continue with the business of red boxes, for example, some private meetings that will be on medical advice, even possibly including his weekly meeting with the Prime Minister, if his physicians tell him that he is able to maintain that kind of contact. When it comes to investitures, the giving out of honours, state visits, it's too early for the palace to begin to guide us as to what will happen with that, although they have said that despite his commitments to his wife and his young family, Prince William may come and step up for his father when needed. And I think the underlying sense tonight, amid the enormous shock of this, is the fact that the King is determined, he says, to return to public duty as soon as he can, and that he is wholly positive about his condition and has thanked all of the medical staff who've given him, he says, such expert care and advice so far.
All right, Rachel Younger at Buckingham Palace, thank you. And if you are just joining us this evening, there is an announcement from Buckingham Palace that King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. Let's go straight to our royal editor on the phone, Chris Shipp. What do you make of the statement, Chris?
Well, look, Mary, I think this has come out of the blue, obviously, and we were told of the King's hospital treatment just a few weeks ago, and that the prostate cancer was benign. All the palace are saying at the moment is that this cancer is not, to repeat, not prostate, but it was discovered. Whatever they found and did tests on was discovered when he was having that treatment at the London clinic, where he went in, as you remember, on the Friday morning and came out after 3 nights in hospital. So the tests that they did clearly came back, and they're sharing this news now. Whilst they're not telling us what cancer it is, I think the palace are cognizant that they want to be as open as possible where they can, and once the King's treatment has started, they will tell us what kind of cancer he has. But right now he wants to get on with his cancer treatment, and that's why he's returned from Sandringham, where he spent the weekend, and he's now back at Buckingham Palace.
And Chris, as you say, it's obviously seemingly an effort by the palace to dampen speculation. They say His Majesty has chosen to share his diagnosis to prevent speculation, and in the hope that it may assist public understanding around the world for all of those who are affected by cancer.
Oh, look, I mean, a lot of people, a lot of families, a lot of people watching this have all been affected by cancer, and they know what a battle it can be. They also know, many people know what successes you can have when you receive good cancer treatment and it is caught very early, which we imagine this has been the case because this was found while the King was having his prostate surgery last week. But in the same way that the palace tell us that they wanted to share his prostate operation because they thought it would help other people, I think also it stops everyone going into a panic. If we discovered, for example, this evening the King was in hospital, we didn't know why, there'll be all sorts of speculation, all sorts of hairs will be running in all sorts of directions about why he's in hospital. And I think this is a particular problem for the palace because we've got a relatively new monarch. Here is King Charles III, who's got this job, if we can call it that, when his mother passed away in September 2022. So that 18 months later, we are dealing now not with just one, but two pretty serious procedures for the King, and therefore they do need to share this information to stop everyone speculating wildly about why the relatively new monarch is in hospital. But if you say he's a 75-year-old man, he had his 75th birthday in November, and I think we should expect that there will be health scares. We don't at this point, Mary, know how serious the cancer is, what it is, and how early it has been caught. But let's be clear, a lot of people do have very successful cancer treatment and go on to live very fulfilling lives after it.
Well, they certainly do, but cancer treatment can be quite debilitating, can't it, Chris? And I'm wondering, and I imagine a lot of our viewers will be wondering too, what will be the extent of the work that he's able to do while he is undergoing, whether it's chemotherapy or radiotherapy or whatever, and what role might the Prince of Wales actually take in this, in terms of taking some of the weight off his shoulders?
Well, there is that sort of complication because obviously the Prince of Wales was taking some time out from his own public duties in order to care for his wife, the Princess of Wales, Kate, who's been in hospital for what we were told was pretty major abdominal surgery. She will remain off at home recuperating until Easter. We were actually told earlier today that the Prince of Wales would be going back to work on Wednesday. So he's got an investiture at Windsor Castle. He's also got an event in the evening for London Air Ambulance to raise funds for the vital service that London Air Ambulance provides. When we got that information, we just thought, OK, well, that's the Prince William going back to work. Kate's clearly settled at home. She is recovering after her operation. Tonight, however, we have to assume that Prince William will be taking on more and more of his father's responsibilities as monarch, because we currently now have a monarch who can't fulfil all of his duties. Now, let's be clear, Buckingham Palace have said that he can still do his red boxes, the affairs of state that he gets sent every day. Operation on his prostate last week, but we now do have to assume that as long as Kate being out of action, King Charles being out of action for some considerable time, at least in terms of public facing duties, a lot of that will now fall both on Prince William's shoulders as the son and heir, but also onto Queen Camilla, the Queen consort. She is therefore stepping into that role, Mary, in quite a major way as consort to the King, because while he's unable to do his duties, she will continue her own. We're told she will have a full programme, no changes to her programme. And actually last week, she was a very busy member of the royal family, the only one doing duties, and she did 4 various visits last week, and all those charities and organisations she was supporting, I'm sure were very glad that she did. But clearly, more of the weight of the visits will fall on her shoulders as consort, but also, as I say, to Prince William now as well, because they will have to pick up some of the engagements the King can no longer do himself.
OK, Chris Shipp, for the moment, no doubt I'll be returning to you in due course, but for the moment, thank you very much. And let's turn to our health correspondent, Rebecca Barry, who's with me here in the studio. The Palace being very open about this diagnosis of cancer. They haven't said what kind of cancer it is. They may well do in due course. What are we to read into this, do you think?
Well, as you say, Buckingham Palace are not sharing details of the specific type of cancer that the King has at this stage, but they have confirmed, as you say, that he does not have prostate cancer. Of course, it would be unwise, impossible to speculate at this stage, but we do know that the King, of course, has recently been treated for benign prostate enlargement. And it was during that treatment that this separate issue of concern, as Buckingham Palace are describing it, was spotted, and it has now been diagnosed as a form of cancer. We're told he'll receive appropriate treatment for that, but because we don't know the type or what stage it's at, we can't speculate on any prognosis. But we are told that His Majesty is receiving expert care, as you'd expect, and that he's looking forward to returning to public duty as soon as possible. We don't know yet whether he will be undergoing any radiotherapy or chemotherapy or any other type of treatment. Buckingham Palace say they'll not be sharing those details at this stage, but we do know the King has returned from Sandringham to London, where he has begun treatment as an outpatient. It was during the treatment for that benign enlargement, prostate enlargement, that this was discovered, and is often the case. It was almost thanks to that treatment that this second condition has been discovered. We're told the King has chosen to make these details public because he was encouraged by the impact that his diagnosis of prostate enlargement helped raise public awareness. The NHS said that on the day that diagnosis was announced, the relevant page on NHS England received 1 visit every 5 seconds. And Buckingham Palace said at that time that the King was delighted that it had such a positive impact on public health awareness. So
this was members of the public being encouraged to check or book in for checks for their prostate simply because the King had been so open about it?
Yeah, people going online and also going to get checked out. I mean, it's a common condition. 1 in 3 men over the age of 50 will have symptoms of enlarged prostate, includes things like needing to go to the toilet more often and things like that. It was a week ago that he came out of hospital, having spent 3 nights in hospital receiving treatment for that enlarged prostate. And when he walked out of the clinic, he was waving to members of the public. He looked well. He was also seen yesterday at a church service in Sandringham in Norfolk, and he was again seen smiling and waving to the members of the public. It is unusual to get this level of detail, but clearly the King is encouraged by the impact that being so open and transparent is having on members of the public.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? That sort of openness would never have happened under the Queen's reign, but it's a generational thing, isn't it? Modern Britain, we are more open about health.
Yeah, I mean, another question that some people might be interested in is whether or not the King will be receiving treatment on the NHS or privately. Again, we don't know that yet, but no doubt there's a balance of things that the palace has to consider. The King's privacy and security, and where he'll get the most specialist treatment, and also potentially the impact on other patients and resources if it was within the NHS.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much for the moment, Rebecca. Thank you. Let's go straight to our UK editor, Paul Brand, who's with me. What does this mean, Paul, for his constitutional role as monarch?
So his constitutional role continues, as far as we understand, Mary, and obviously that's an incredibly important role that the King plays. No bills can pass, for example, without the signature of the monarch, and we're told, as we heard from Chris Shipp earlier, that the red boxes will still be delivered to His Majesty, so he'll still be going through those, as the Queen famously did every night. There'll also be state documents, of course, in those red boxes that he'll have to wade through and read, and he will continue to sign bills. He won't be, at this stage, appointing councillors of state. Councillors of state have been used in the past, where a monarch has been incapacitated, for example. You can actually appoint other members of the royal family to carry out some of your constitutional duties. For example, in February 1974, the Queen relied on that when she was abroad and Parliament needs to be dissolved to spark an election, and it was actually the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret who dissolved Parliament on her behalf because she was busy with duties in a foreign land. The King, in this case, is not appointing councillors of state, so that gives you an indication, I think, that he certainly intends to continue with his constitutional duties. He'll also continue with things like investitures. Obviously, another important part of his royal duties. So he'll continue to knight people and also give them their honours. The one thing we're unclear on at the moment is audiences with the Prime Minister. They will continue on a weekly basis. We know that they've always continued, even through the pandemic, for example. The Queen continued to hold weekly audiences, though they went over to Zoom. And the palace say that potentially His Majesty might try to minimise in-person contact, so potentially carry out some of those duties on Zoom. He's also going to continue to meet with the Privy Council. Privy Council made famous during the coronation, the proclamation ceremony ahead of the coronation, where we saw lots of those members of Parliament, former ministers, current ministers, standing around as the King was officially proclaimed following the death of Queen Elizabeth II. So he'll continue to meet with those as well, although again,
by Zoom, possibly, and the Queen
possibly.
You'd imagine by Zoom, didn't she?
If there's any concern around him catching a cold or catching another virus, you'd imagine that those would continue over Zoom, particularly with the Privy Council. There are hundreds of members of the Privy Council. An audience with the Prime Minister might be a slightly different affair. You can keep a bit more of a distance with the Prime Minister. It's just one person in that room with the monarch at any one time. Privy Council potentially is a slightly more complex affair.
Yes, it's interesting, all the levers of state that come into play at times like this, but there doesn't appear to be any question of any sort of regency with the Prince of Wales stepping up into a more high-profile role at this stage.
And that would be extraordinary. We haven't had a regency for 200 years. That really is an extraordinary measure for a monarch to take. And, even the Queen, when she was in her final days, there was never any discussion, was there, of a regency. So I think the King would be incredibly reluctant to even consider that. And at the moment, although we don't know much about the form of cancer that he's got or the stage of his treatment, it seems clear from all the indications in the briefing that we've been given by the palace that the constitutional role continues, and he's nowhere near even considering any of those more severe measures.
OK, all right. For the moment, Paul, thank you for that. And in case you are just joining us, we have heard an announcement from Buckingham Palace which has revealed that the King is suffering from cancer. Now, we don't know precisely what kind of cancer it is. We know it was discovered when he was in hospital being examined for an enlarged prostate last week. It has not been revealed in any more detail than that, but we know that the King would like to be open, he says, because he wants speculation to stop, and also because he wants it to be instructive and useful for anyone around the world who is affected by cancer. So this news obviously quite significant. Let's go to Rachel, who is outside Buckingham Palace. Rachel, what are you hearing?
Well, people are just beginning to process the shock of this news here. We've just been speaking to some who've already come to the palace, having heard the news in the past 10 or 15 minutes or so, who've said it's come as such a surprise because, of course, we heard, didn't we, just last Monday that he was safely out of hospital. The Queen telling well-wishers during her duties, which she carried out as usual last week, determined to do so, that he was recovering well. As one person said, they've only just started printing banknotes with his face on. They feel desperately upset, quite frankly, to hear that he is going to now have to deal with this prognosis. No surprise that no further details are being shared. We know, don't we, that this is not prostate cancer. The palace have said that because they wanted to make that clear in the light of the condition that he was being treated for, that enlarged prostate. And they've said too that he wanted to share this latest diagnosis, that it is cancer, because he is patron of a number of cancer charities. Just on Friday, Camilla was visiting the Royal Free Maggie's Support Centre, opening that. And I understand that she took the decision to attend that event, possibly knowing already of his diagnosis. And I think that sends a really strong message that they are determined, as far as possible, here at Buckingham Palace, to go on with business as usual. It's my understanding that the King personally contacted both his two sons and his siblings to break the news of his condition to them. Whether that happened over the weekend or today, we don't know, and we're not going to find out, it's important to say, any more details of the King's prognosis or exactly what kind of cancer he has. There is a real balance to be struck here between the public's right to know. This is, of course, the head of state, a figurehead, a man who, when he was crowned just 9 months ago, almost to the day, and appeared on the balcony behind me here, made it clear that what he wanted to do was to provide this country with some stability in what have been very turbulent times. Two prime ministers just in the first few months of his reign that he's had to contend with. And I think that is why the message is coming through very clearly, that as far as he is able to do, he will continue with what duties he can, not public engagements. The palace has made it clear that those will be rearranged or postponed, and that came with a personal apology from the King for all those he would let down. But what he can do, he will do, with the Queen at his side when she can be, but carrying on with a full programme of her public engagements in the meantime.
OK, Rachel Younger at Buckingham Palace, thank you. And our political correspondent Harry Horton is in Downing Street for us. Harry, what's the government saying about this news?
Well, the sense from number 10 tonight, like that from Buckingham Palace, is very much that, as much as possible, it will be business as usual when it comes to the King's constitutional role in the functioning of government. And you can see at number 10 tonight, receptions and engagements continuing as normal. As Paul was saying, the King holds a weekly audience with the Prime Minister. That usually happens in person. We're told that that will likely continue to be in person unless medical advice suggests that the King needs to minimise in-person contact. We're also told that the King will continue to receive his red boxes, will continue to process state documents during his treatment. Now, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, we understand, was informed of the King's diagnosis before that information was made public. Rishi Sunak has issued a statement tonight. He said that he's wishing His Majesty a full and speedy recovery. I have no doubt he'll be back to full strength in no time, and I know the whole country will be wishing him well. We've also had statements from across the political spectrum. The leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, has also issued his own statement tonight. He says, on behalf of the Labour Party, I wish His Majesty the very best for his recovery. We look forward to seeing him back to swift, full health. In the House of Commons, the Speaker, Sir Lindsay Hoyle, has also been issuing a statement. He's been addressing MPs in the last few minutes, and here's what he's had to say.
I wish to make a short statement. I know the whole House will wish to join me in expressing our sympathies with His Majesty the King following the news announcement this evening. Our thoughts are, of course, with His Majesty and his family, and with all wish to send him our very best wishes for the successful treatment and a speedy recovery following tonight's news.
So MPs still absorbing this news this evening, but as I say, the sense here from number 10 is that those weekly audiences between the Prime Minister and the King, they will continue in person for the foreseeable future, and the King's constitutional role, receiving those red boxes and processing state documents, that will continue as well.
OK, Harry Horton at Downing Street, thank you for the moment. And if you are just joining us, a reminder of our main news tonight. Buckingham Palace has released a statement saying that the King has been diagnosed with cancer. We're going to be keeping you across that story as it develops during the early part of this evening. But in the meantime, let's go to our UK editor, Paul Brand. Harry Horton revealing from Downing Street that everyone is determined that everything will happen as normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got more and more well wishes coming in for the King this evening as well. Mary Michelle O'Neill, for example, just appointed First Minister in Northern Ireland, says, I'm very sorry to hear of King Charles' illness and I want to wish him well for his treatment and a full and speedy recovery. Another reminder there of how far politics has come in Northern Ireland, that she should send such a heartfelt message to the King. And Mark Drakeford, First Minister, for the time being anyway, in Wales, said that he's saddened to hear the news that the King is facing further health challenges. My thoughts and those of the people across Wales will be with him and his family this evening. Of course, King Charles was formerly the Prince of Wales. As we were discussing earlier, no councillors of state at this stage have been appointed. And for anyone interested in how that process works, you have to be a member of the royal family who's over the age of 21. And there are currently a handful of councillors, potential councillors of state, who can be appointed if the King was very ill or if he was having some very serious treatment that maybe took it out of him for a short while. They could be appointed and undertake various royal duties, constitutional royal duties, rather than going out and about and greeting crowds and opening hospitals. These would be constitutional duties that would be carried out, for example, by the Prince of Wales, also Queen Camilla. She could carry out those duties as a councillor of state as well, the Duke of Sussex, the Duke of York. Princess Beatrice as well, interestingly, qualifies as a councillor of state. But at the moment, none of those kind of constitutional duties and constitutional responsibilities are being handed over to other members of the royal family. So again, I think that tells us two things. One, it's a reminder of the duty that the royal family feels, and the King has inherited that clearly from his mother, that sense of duty that no matter what's going on in your life and whatever illness you might have, you carry on. But also, again, it signifies that thankfully His Majesty is not ill enough that he needs to be considering at this stage relying on councillors of state.
All right, Paul, for the moment, thank you. And statements are coming in all over. We have a statement from Geoffrey Donaldson, who's the DUP leader. He's extended his best wishes to the King, sending His Majesty the King every good wish as he commences his treatment. So statements coming in from all over the country. And we also have a detail that's coming from across the Atlantic. We have been told by a royal source that the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, has spoken with the King about his cancer diagnosis and will travel to the UK to see him in the coming days. So all sorts of bits of news are coming in. We'll keep you up to date with them as they appear. But in the meantime, let's go.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
The First Minister of Scotland as well, Humza Yousaf, who says, my thoughts and prayers are with His Majesty the King. I wish him the very best for a speedy recovery. So statements from every single constituent nation of the UK now.
Indeed, Paul. I will return to you in just a moment. But in the meantime, just turning to our health editor, Rebecca Barry. A cancer diagnosis today is very different to a cancer diagnosis of 30 years ago, isn't it? And treatments have advanced so significantly.
Yeah, there are constant advances in cancer treatment, and of course the UK is a world leader in that. But for some, this will be very unsettling news. A cancer diagnosis is sadly Not uncommon. Every 2 minutes, someone in the UK gets diagnosed with cancer. Incidence rates for all cancers in the UK are highest in the elderly, people aged 85 to 89. The King is 75. Each year, more than a third of all cancers, apparently, are diagnosed in people aged 75 and over. We don't know the type of cancer he has or how advanced it is or isn't, but half of people diagnosed with cancer in England and Wales survive the disease for 10 years or more. In the past, the 75-year-old King has been largely healthy. He had COVID twice, back in 2002 and 2020. He had a cancerous growth removed back in 2008 and had a routine hernia operation in 2003. But other than that, he has been largely healthy, and this openness, this transparency from Buckingham Palace is something new, something we've not really seen before.
Yes, it really is striking, isn't it? So 75 nowadays isn't very old, is it? Once upon a time it might have been considered elderly, now no longer. Rebecca, thank you for the time being. I will no doubt return to you during the programme, but in the meantime, you're watching ITV News. It is pretty much exactly 6:30. If you're just joining us, here is a recap of this evening's breaking news. King Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. His public duties are cancelled as he begins immediate treatment. The condition was picked up in the past few weeks while the King was receiving treatment for an enlarged prostate. The Palace have made clear that the King does not have prostate cancer, but so far no further details are being shared on the stage or indeed prognosis of his condition. Well, tonight, King Charles is beginning a specialist treatment for cancer. Tests carried out following last month's prostate operation picked up the condition, we're told, although the cancer is not apparently in his prostate. As aides cleared the King's diary, Charles personally told members of his family, including both his sons. Well, this evening, Buckingham Palace insisted the King remains wholly positive about his treatment and looks forward, he says, to returning to full public duty as soon as possible. John Ray has the latest.
This was the last public glimpse of the King with Queen Camilla at St Mary Magdalene Church on the Sandringham estate just yesterday. It is exactly a week since he was discharged from the London Clinic private hospital for what was called a corrective procedure for an enlarged prostate, said to be benign. Charles was greeted by well-wishers.
How are you feeling?
And with his wife by his side, looked in good spirits. The palace said he would take several weeks' break from what has been a busy royal schedule to recuperate. But tonight, a further and unexpected development concerning the King's health. In a statement in the past hour, Buckingham Palace revealed that Charles has cancer, discovered during his prostate surgery, but not related to it. A palace statement said, "It was during this intervention that a separate issue of concern was noted and subsequently diagnosed as a form of cancer. This second condition will now receive appropriate treatment." The palace released this new photograph of the King taken recently and said he returned to London today to receive expert treatment as an outpatient. No monarch has served a longer apprenticeship. Charles was crowned just last May after the death of his beloved mother, who reigned for more than 70 years. He promised then to dedicate himself, as she had done, to lifelong service to the United Kingdom and to the Commonwealth. Charles will be forced to step back from public duties, but he will continue to receive his government's official papers that are central to his constitutional role. Tonight, the Royal Standard is flying above Buckingham Palace, a sign that the King is in residence. It is not clear when he will be able to resume his full royal duties. John Ray, ITV News. OK, so let's recap that statement from Buckingham Palace in full now.
And it reads, during the King's recent hospital procedure for benign prostate enlargement, a separate issue of concern was noted. Subsequent diagnostic tests have identified a form of cancer. His Majesty has today commenced a schedule of regular treatments, during which time he has been advised by doctors to postpone public-facing duties. Throughout this period, His Majesty will continue to undertake state business and official paperwork as usual. The King is grateful to his medical team for their swift intervention, which was made possible thanks to his recent hospital procedure. He remains wholly positive about his treatment and looks forward to returning to full public duty as soon as possible. His Majesty has chosen to share his diagnosis to prevent speculation and in the hope that it may assist public understanding for all those around the world who are affected by cancer. So that is the statement from Buckingham Palace regarding the King's cancer diagnosis. Our correspondent Rachel Younger is at Buckingham Palace now. Rachel, this news released in the last hour or so. What more do you know at this stage?
Well, we know that the King is here tonight in London. He spends his nights at Clarence House while state business goes on here in Buckingham Palace. We haven't been told exactly where he is at the moment, only that he travelled down from Sandringham, where we saw pictures of him spending the weekend visiting St Mary's Church with the Queen, Camilla, but that he's come here to begin his outpatient treatment. Now, the Palace are not going to tell us where that will take place. There is a balance really here between the King's right, like anybody else's, to some kind of privacy around his condition and his health, and that's why they're not telling us exactly what kind of cancer he has, aside to say that it is not prostate cancer. It was simply discovered following an intervention for the enlarged prostate he was in hospital for, emerging just a week ago today. So we won't be getting regular updates on his condition or any more detail, I think, on what he is suffering from. But we do understand that the King wanted to share his cancer diagnosis because he is a patron of so many charities, so many organisations that help and support the many people in this country who have to go through something similar. We understand too that he has been deeply encouraged by the fact that so many men, on reading about what had happened to him with his benign prostate enlargement problem, immediately went to websites run by the NHS and were encouraged to check themselves. So you can almost hear his disappointment in the very brief statements we've had from Buckingham Palace when they say that he won't be able to carry out his next public engagements, that for an undefined period of time they will be postponed or rearranged, and he's apologised personally to anybody who may be affected by that or disappointed by that. You remember him standing on the balcony behind me here 9 months ago as he was crowned, making it clear that he wasn't here to be served, he was here to serve. He'd waited his whole life to do that, and it's clear he feels very determined to get back to his full public duties as soon as he can do that, although there is no timescale being given for that. I think what has come as a particular shock is this particular moment when this news has broken, because Prince William has been away from frontline duties because of his wife receiving hospital treatment. So he hasn't been able to step up as much as he would have liked to have wanted to. We hear from the palace that he may well begin to do that as his wife recovers, standing in for his father over the next weeks and months, and that Queen Camilla, despite her determination to be by his side as much as possible, also plans to carry on with her full programme of public engagements.
All right, Rachel Younger at Buckingham Palace for the moment. Thank you. And with me is the King's biographer, Catherine Mayer, who's with me here in the studio. And Catherine, you have known the King for 40 years.
Yeah.
You've written the definitive book on him. I mean, what do you make of this statement and the way he's dealing with this?
Well, there is always this tension between the public and private role. And he's somebody who's been at the crosshairs of that tension at various times in his life, where, you know, they keep repeating a phrase in royal communications about reasonable expectation of privacy. That's completely right. But he is also, of course, now in, what was called the top job. And so there is also a public duty to inform. And so they're trying to steer this very careful balance, but it's really difficult because even if, clearly there is more known than is being said, but even with all of the facts, with this sort of illness, things change. It's not necessarily going to be predictable anyway. So some of it, there is some deliberate blurring of detail to give him privacy, but some of it, they don't know either. But I found I was actually, I don't know, even though I'd sort of in some ways expected this in the sense that he had been looking frail and his hospital stay was too long, there is something poignant about this happening so early in his reign when we know how long he has been anticipating this reign as well. And there's also the whole sense of the fragility of the institution and the people in it with Catherine's news as well.
The kind of the shock that they are human after all, I suppose. I mean, he's only been actually officially king since the coronation for 9 months, hasn't he? It is very soon.
Yes, it's something, when he was crowned, you saw that moment where the crown was put on his head, and you had a sense exactly of how frail a man he now is because it looked heavy on his head. So this is the thing, it's an institution like no other where it is all about the people. There is real power in the institution, it is absolutely interwoven with the different institutions of state. But where prime ministers come and go very fast in this country, there is not that, this is one where it is about the lifespan. And so I think there is also another resonance to this because we have so recently witnessed the transition and we are so aware of everything that led up to this in terms of this being literally and metaphorically the crowning moment of his life.
Yes.
So for this to happen so soon, I found that I was genuinely shocked by the news, even though, as I say, I was sort of expecting it.
I suppose after the Queen's reign, which was so long and so untroubled by ill health, apparently, ever, it is surprising, isn't it, as you say, this soon to encounter a hiccup. But he is a much older man, clearly, than the Queen was when she came to the throne.
Yes, but on the other hand, his father was in fine fettle for a very long time. And it is also true that that's another reason why it feels surprising, is because the royal genes appear to be extremely robust. Camilla has spoken, the Queen has spoken about her own health issues, her support for the osteoporosis charities, for example. So, you look at her and you think that's a woman for whom some of the endless round of public duty might come heavy. But, when I haven't spent time with him now since the sort of 2014, I think, is the last time I spent a serious amount of time with him. But I went on a walk with him and I could barely keep up. And I was a lot fitter back then too. But, he's somebody that you expected to be much more like his parents and be robust. Of course, he may well come through this, but this is clearly a serious health setback, or we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Yes, indeed. For the moment, Catherine Mayer, thank you. Our royal editor, Chris Shipp, is here, having rushed in. Listening to what Catherine says, we're used to our monarchs being apparently supernatural, aren't we? They're lasting forever, and I suppose it is, almost immortal. But he is mortal, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, kind of superhuman in a way, but they're not. They're all humans. But I mean, I will say that we just simply didn't know as much information about his mother and father. Perhaps they didn't share things that his father went into hospital for all those times ago. And actually, we've had now, some quite detailed clarity about why the king was in hospital, a week and a half ago, and now sharing this diagnosis as well now. So therefore, I think we do have to sort of acknowledge that, this is a 75-year-old man, and 75-year-old men do have health scares, and it's just so happened that the king has had two of them, or at least two that they've let us know about in the past couple of weeks. So, look, and I agree, it is a major setback, of course it is, for a monarch so sort of early in his reign, but that's what happens, I think, when you have a 75-year-old monarch, and clearly is much more susceptible to, to conditions and ailments such as the ones we've been told about today and last week.
You were talking about the openness in comparison to perhaps the Queen's reign, and is it striking how open Buckingham Palace have been about the King's condition when we all were told that he had an enlarged prostate, and now that he's got cancer? That is new, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we've just seen the shots there of the King leaving in his car as he left the London clinic last week, where, again, coincidentally, he was in the hospital at exactly the same time as his daughter-in-law, the Princess of Wales. But I think this openness is a sign of the times. I think we whilst the King is 75, as you just said, we do have a different generation in charge of the royal family now. And even the way in which the Queen Camilla went in and out of hospital last week, sometimes twice a day, to check in on her husband. You remember the late Queen and Prince Philip never really did that when either of them were in hospital. So, yes, I mean, it's an indication we have a different generation at the top of the monarchy. But as you say, they are going to come across these health issues. And we're told the King can still do a lot of his sort of red book stuff, the paperwork from government. He's just going to have to withdraw from public for a while. And that means that a lot of the focus and attention will now be on his son, the Prince of Wales, and also Kate. And actually, I should probably just pick up on the whole thing that you were saying just now about Harry coming over. I mean, I don't know what to sort of read into that, but if he's coming over in the coming days, as his office tells us he is, and we know everything, all the history in recent years about what's been going on in that family and Harry's book and all the problems he's had with the institution of monarchy, he's coming back quite quickly to see his father. I mean, I just let people read into that what way they will, but that sounds like he really urgently does want to come across and see the King.
All right. Chris, lots more still to talk about, I think. For the moment, thank you. And we are going to take a short break now. Do stay with us, as we'll have more on this news from Buckingham Palace. And we'll see you in just a few moments' time.
Are we ready? Good job.
Calling bright minds and big hearts, builders of trust and wobbly towers.
Well done. High five, hand.
Who know what it means to count and be counted on. And know that every little thing they do makes a big difference. Do something big. Work with small children.
I'm inside the camera.
Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. And right now, you can save up to £240 for a family of 4. We've got millions of free child place holidays available, with 22 kilograms of baggage included. Book now with Jet2 Holidays. Package holidays you can trust. After protected.
Can Ariel take on the Wash Cold Challenge? Turn down and see. Tough stains like mud and sweat are harder to remove in a cold wash. Ariel pods are rated best on stains by Which. They dissolve fast for a brilliant clean, even on cold. And if you turn to wash colder, you could save up to 60% on your washing machine energy cost. Wash colder with Ariel, rated best on stains by Which. Always keep away from children.
You work hard to keep your mouth healthy. But wait, does your toothpaste work just as hard? All toothpastes clean, but Oral-B Densify goes beyond clean. Over time, most people can experience tooth density loss. Oral-B works harder to prevent future density loss and strengthens teeth to extend the life of teeth. Go beyond clean with the toothpaste brand dentists use themselves. Oral-B Densify. Brush like a pro.
Treats erection difficulties for up to 36 hours. Plenty of time to change plans. Cialis Together could be your lucky day and a half.
Andy found energy for 6 a.m. runs when he slept on the expertly designed Emma Sleep bedroom set. Find yours at emma-sleep.co.uk.
Some things in life you know are going to happen. Just as you know Sun Life will always pay your claim. For the UK's favourite over 50s plan, call free or go online today and claim your free gift card worth £125. Because as you know, Sun Life's cover always pays.
Lindor. Irresistibly smooth, melting chocolate. From the Lindt Master Chocolatier, you choose the moment, we'll provide the bliss. Discover new Lindor Dark 70%.
With O2, get the future in your hands. With the epic new Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, powered by AI. Plus, claim your Samsung Galaxy Buds 2 Pro and Galaxy Smart Tag 2. From under £56 a month. O2. See what you can do.
Hello and welcome back to our continuing coverage of the King's diagnosis with cancer. And we can get some reaction to that news from Simon Lewis now. Now, he was a former head of communications at Buckingham Palace and also at number 10 Downing Street in his time. So, Simon, thank you for joining us this evening. How surprised are you at the amount of detail we've received from the Palace?
Well, I think we're getting used to it. There's a new era. I think the Palace are doing exactly the right thing. They've given as much information as they possibly can, which is the right thing to do. And I do think the King has made it clear, both with the original diagnosis of the benign prostate enlargement and now this cancer treatment, that he wants people to actually understand that early diagnosis testing is the right thing to do. So I think both his advisors and the King himself have done absolutely the right thing, difficult and uncomfortable though it must be.
How much of a change is there when there is a change of monarch? Because we became used over, very many decades to the way Buckingham Palace operated with the Queen at its head. It is quite interesting, isn't it, to see how different things are under King Charles.
Well, as we've said before, obviously the King, the Prince of Wales, had a long time to prepare for succession, and the people around him, his private secretary, his head of communications secretary, worked with him as the Prince of Wales, and I think they thought very carefully about how they wanted to message a change in style, a change in approach, and I think it's come through not just in these sad hours this afternoon, but across the whole of the year. I think we've seen the King as an open person. We're getting to know much more about the operations of the palace, and so although this is tough this afternoon, I think generally this first year has shown that the King and his advisors are playing an absolute blinder when it comes to communicating what they want this monarchy to be about.
Simon, in your experience of working at the palace, how far up or down does the decision-making go? Would this have been a decision directly from the King of the tenor of their announcements, or will it have been something that's offered to the King as advice from his advisors?
Well, I don't know, but my assumption would be that it would have been a very personal decision by the King and the Queen. And let's not forget that the Queen was by his side when he went into hospital last week. That's also quite unusual, seeing royal visitors coming in to see members of the royal family. These are, any family that's had a problem with cancer knows that these are very personal decisions. And actually the other thing is, in a situation like this, you want your family around you. And that's what's happening, and that's exactly what happens in families up and down the country. So what we're seeing here is not very different in terms of the reality of it from what people are experiencing day in and day out. And that's why, again, this transparency, this desire to be open about these conditions is so important for the country as a whole, and our health service, actually.
Simon, it's Chris Shipp in the studio here. I mean, obviously we heard, 2 weeks ago when they were very open and they shared the news about his prostate operation. They're being open about the cancer, but not telling us exactly what it is. What do you think the reason for that might be, and why do you think that they've decided to hold some of that information back?
Well, I'm sure, Chris, they've given as much information as they feel they possibly can at this stage. I mean, what was fascinating is when the King announced that he had a benign enlarged prostate, the number of men who on the back of that actually went to have a PSA test, which is the crucial test you need for prostate cancer. So this is the next stage. They've obviously diagnosed something during the course of the procedure, I guess, which again is possibly a good sign given that it's early diagnosis. And I genuinely think they've said as much as they possibly can. And the treatment's about to begin, and I think they've also made it clear that there probably won't be a huge amount more information until there's something genuinely that needs to be said. And of course, the machinery of government continues, and the King's made it absolutely clear that that's what he wants. And that's also worth bearing in mind, that people can operate and can work when they are receiving treatment. That's a big message, I think, for the country as a whole.
All right, Simon Lewis at Buckingham Palace for the time being. Thank you so much. And just returning to you, Chris, it is interesting. Simon Lewis had obviously experience of working within the palace machinery and doing the communications in that way. There's obviously nothing happens by accident at the palace, does it? Everything is absolutely deliberate.
Yes, and look, we saw him leave hospital last Monday. He walked out. That was deliberate. They allowed us to have our cameras there. He could have gone out a number of other entrances of that hospital, of which there are many. We know that Kate, the Princess of Wales, managed to get out without being photographed. But they clearly wanted him to be seen. He's had that quite big operation. He's the head of state. Here he is, back on his feet. He got in his car. He waved to the cameras. He drove off. Now, clearly, as we now understand, this is not prostate cancer. That's the one thing they've told us this isn't. But this cancer was discovered during the course of that operation. So you've got to take this back a few days. They probably found out in the latter part of last week. And therefore, this whole operation of telling us today, I don't think they cooked it up this morning very quickly. I'm sure they've been thinking about this all weekend, about how to do it, when to do it, how much information to share and all the rest of it, because there are some significant consequences of it. He has to withdraw from public life. He is the head of state. He's a relatively new monarch as well. So all of these things they've had to weigh up. We are told, however, once his treatment is underway, they might then share a little bit more detail about his condition. And the King is cognizant, just as he was when he shared his prostate operation, he wants to share this information to help members of the public to know that lots of people do go through cancer. Lots of families are affected by it, just as lots of men are affected by prostate issues as well. And that's why they've been so open about it, because they want his position to help share that information to get more people to get checked. And who knows, from sharing of the prostate operation, perhaps some men will go and get checked and discover they've got cancer and caught it at a very early stage. You know, that will be the effect that doctors tell me is likely to happen as a result.
And in the meantime, the business of ruling goes on. He's going to be doing the nuts and bolts of that, we're told. But the public face of the monarchy, which is also very important, is going to be carried by Camilla, isn't it? Queen Camilla.
Camilla and William, I think. So Prince William is coming back to work on Wednesday. He took that time off to be with Kate in hospital, but also to look after their 3 children who go to school near Windsor. And then we were told just this morning that he's going back to work. I'm told that is still going ahead. No change to that plan. He's got a investiture at Windsor Castle. There's lots of those all the time. They can get many members of the royal family to do them, but it is William that is doing it on Wednesday. He's got a fundraising event in the evening with the London Air Ambulance, of which he's patron, and actually flew one of their helicopters fairly recently as well. He will be taking on some extra work, we're told, on behalf of his father. But of course, we've got to think of this role that Camilla, the Queen, has now got. It's in the title, the Queen Consort. You are the support to the monarch, just as Prince Philip was the support to the Queen Elizabeth for so many years. This is the moment when the Queen, who is the oldest member of the top 4 of the royal family, she's older than the King at 76. She's going to be carrying on with her duties, and she'll be the face of monarchy, and that in itself is quite a remarkable turnaround from where we were 20 or 30 years ago.
Yes, it certainly is. Chris, thank you. And let's go straight to Hugo Vickers, the royal author who we regularly speak to at Moments of History. Hugo, how significant is this in all of your years of following the royal family, the announcement, the way it was made, and also obviously the content?
Well, I think it's very significant, and it's obviously been a huge shock. I think it's also particularly sad when you think back to literally 2 years ago when we saw the Queen on the brink of her Platinum Jubilee when she was at Sandringham, because as you know, the King, George VI, died on the 6th of February, 1952. And although that wasn't a day of celebration, we saw her out and about. She cut a cake at Sandringham, and we were absolutely thrilled that she was celebrating this great anniversary. And a lot of things have happened since then, as you know. And it's very sad that the King should be struck down with this so very soon after his coronation, because I see him as sort of not as a stopgap king in any way, but as someone who is suddenly fulfilling all the things that he's been trained for. And as a head of state, I think that he's found that he's been able to enjoy conversations with people like President Biden, President Macron on a one-to-one level behind the scenes, and that they probably listen to him very much more than they would have done even when he was Prince of Wales. So it is very sad.
So, Hugo, we're looking right now at pictures of the coronation, which is only 9 months ago. And as you say, the King, Buckingham Palace are very keen that he is not seen in any way as a stopgap monarch, aren't they?
Well, they are, absolutely. And, you know, he had plenty of time to think about what he wanted to do when he came to the throne. And if you look at the sort of engagements that he's been undertaking, they're already very different from what the Queen was doing. Obviously, the Queen was a certain age, you know, she was very old, and so she was limited in what she could do. But if you look at the court circular, you know, which records all the duties that he does, you see him going to a lot of sort of interfaith meetings, going to a lot of deprived areas. He's really, as king, able to, you know, continue the work that he did as Prince of Wales, but in a very dignified way, because he doesn't make controversial statements in public anymore. I always thought it was rather good that he did when he was Prince of Wales, but it doesn't mean that he can't be extremely effective. So, you know, let's just hope that this is a temporary setback for him.
Yes, indeed. Hugo Vickers, for the moment, thank you. Now, if you are just joining us, it's a little after 7 o'clock, and here's a recap of this evening's developing story. King Charles is beginning specialist treatment tonight for cancer and will be taking a step back from his royal duties, his public duties. The condition was picked up in the past few weeks while he was receiving treatment for an enlarged prostate. The palace has made clear he does not have prostate cancer, but no further details have so far been shared. The King personally shared the news with his family, including both his sons. And the messages of goodwill are even now coming in. Now, let me share that statement with you in full that came from Buckingham Palace a little earlier. And it reads as follows. During the King's recent hospital procedure for benign prostate enlargement, a separate issue of concern was noted. Subsequent diagnostic tests have identified a form of cancer. His Majesty has today commenced a schedule of regular treatments, during which time he has been advised by doctors to postpone public-facing duties. Throughout this period, His Majesty will continue to undertake state business and official paperwork as usual. The King is grateful to his medical team for their swift intervention, which was made possible thanks to his recent hospital procedure. He remains wholly positive about his treatment and looks forward to returning to full public duty as soon as possible. His Majesty has chosen to share his diagnosis to prevent speculation, excuse me, and in the hope it may assist public understanding for all those around the world who are affected by cancer. Well, tonight, King Charles is beginning specialist treatment for cancer. Tests carried out following last month's prostate operation picked up the condition, although the cancer is not in his prostate. John Ray reports.
This was the last public glimpse of the King, with Queen Camilla at St Mary Magdalene Church on the Sandringham estate just yesterday. It is exactly a week since he was discharged from the London Clinic Private Hospital for what was called a corrective procedure for an enlarged prostate, said to be benign. Charles was greeted by well-wishers.
How are you feeling?
And with his wife by his side, looked in good spirits. The palace said he would take several weeks' break from what has been a busy royal schedule to recuperate. But tonight, a further and unexpected development concerning the King's health. In a statement in the past hour, Buckingham Palace revealed that Charles has cancer, discovered during his prostate surgery, but not related to it. A palace statement said, "It was during this intervention that a separate issue of concern was noted and subsequently diagnosed as a form of cancer. This second condition will now receive appropriate treatment." The palace released this new photograph of the King taken recently and said he returned to London today to receive expert treatment as an outpatient. No monarch has served a longer apprenticeship. Charles was crowned just last May after the death of his beloved mother, who reigned for more than 70 years. He promised then to dedicate himself, as she had done, to lifelong service to the United Kingdom and to the Commonwealth. Charles will be forced to step back from public duties, but he will continue to receive his government's official papers that are central to his constitutional role. Tonight, the Royal Standard is flying above Buckingham Palace, a sign that the King is in residence. It is not clear when he will be able to resume his full royal duties. John Ray, ITV News.
OK, John Ray there. So let's speak now to royal historian Anna Whitelock, who's speaking to us from her home in Cambridge. Anna, let's just talk about the family side of this, if we may start off with. The King has spoken to his sons. In the statement, it was made clear that he broke the news to them. We have a statement from Prince Harry. Apparently, he's coming over in the next few days. No word yet from William.
Indeed. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously a body blow for any family, but I think it's important, first of all, to put it in context. Charles is a man in his 70s. And this is something that people unfortunately experience up and down the country all the time. And I think it's important to acknowledge that people live with, through and beyond cancer treatment. But of course, it's a family matter. And as well, Prince Harry, alongside Prince William, does also have a constitutional function as councillors of state. There's 4 councillors of state besides Queen Camilla, including the Duke of York as well. And I think the important thing to say here is that the palace statements made it very clear that the councillors of state are not needed in this case. There is every sense that Charles will be carrying on business as usual, if just not public business. He will be doing all the work of a monarch. And so the official position of the members of the royal family's councillors of state won't be needed. And therefore we can assume, I think, that Prince Harry is coming not as an official councillor of state, but as a son who's coming to visit his dad, who's just been diagnosed with cancer. So perhaps something positive in the midst of all of this.
Yes, indeed. Although we are told Harry is coming, but no Meghan.
Yeah, I think perhaps indicating that this wasn't a planned trip. It's a trip that's been made in haste. Meghan will be staying presumably with the children. But yeah, I think it's a positive and natural and perhaps spontaneous act on the part of a son at a time when his father's undergoing cancer treatment. So I think it's a good sign. It's a good sign that the Duke of Sussex has announced this, made it known. It's not a sort of secret visit. And perhaps something that we might have not expected to see, and therefore positive that we are going to have Harry back over in the country. Prince William will undoubtedly be stepping up more. He's returning to public duties. He's been supporting his wife, of course. And as Chris was saying, really the monarchy now falls on the shoulders of Queen Camilla, but also I think more and more Prince William. Charles, that statement makes it absolutely clear he's stepping back. He's not stepping down. He will, for a time, though, not be in the public glare. And therefore, it will be down to Camilla, Camilla, William and other members of the royal family to play their part. But in all of this, I think, it's important to contextualise it. He is a man in his 70s. He's the oldest monarch to exceed the throne. We probably might have expected that there were going to be some medical issues along the way, as is typical for a man of that age. But I'm sure there's a sense in the palace that with this early intervention, early diagnosis, he's already started treatment, that he will hopefully in time return to royal duties. And in doing so, and in being so candid about his health in a way that I think his mother never would have done, very deliberately to raise awareness of the need for early treatment. He will also have done a very important role, and in that sense actually modernise the monarchy perhaps in its language, in its style, in a way that perhaps he wouldn't have planned, but actually perhaps will have a great impact and legacy more than he might have imagined.
Okay, Anna Whitelock, no doubt we will be speaking to you again in the next days, in the coming days. All right, for the moment, thank you. And we are going to take a short break now. We will have more reaction to the news of the King's diagnosis. After that, we'll see you for that in just a few minutes' time. Join me then.
Saving for your first home? With Moneybox, your home buying dreams can finally become a reality. Download Moneybox today.
Julie used to make up excuses to say no to things, worried about her unpredictable gut symptoms. But then she discovered new Fibercalm. Fibercalm forms a protective layer. It not only relieves gut symptoms, but also helps prevent them from returning. So now Julie feels she can say yes. Yes to the park run. Yes to camping trips. Yes to one more go. Help prevent future gut symptoms with new Fibercalm and be a yes person.
2024 could be your year to go big, go bold, go further, get closer. And it could be your year to get your free NHS shingles vaccination. If you're 50 or over with a severely weakened immune system or 70 to 79 years old, you can get yours now. If you turn 65 on or after September the 1st, 2023, or turn 65 this year, you can get yours from your birthday. Find out if it's your year at getshinglesready.co.uk.
The TUI Live Happy sale is back. Save up to £250 per booking. With more free kids places than ever before, even in the school summer holidays. Holiday deal booked. TUI Live Happy. Financially protected by Atoll.
Hello and welcome back. Now, if you're just joining us, Buckingham Palace has released a statement revealing the news that Prince Charles has been diagnosed with cancer. Now, they have not specified what particular type of cancer it is. They say it was discovered when he was undergoing treatment for a benign enlarged prostate just in the last couple of weeks. So we have been talking about that, obviously, since 6 o'clock. And let's go straight over to our reporter, Rachel Younger, who is outside Buckingham Palace. Rachel.
Yes, this news coming as quite a shock to those who, even in the hour since we heard the development, have come to Buckingham Palace. We spoke to one family who said they were so surprised, so shocked, they just wanted to come and show their support, because it was only a week ago, wasn't it, that the King emerged from hospital, and we knew that he was recovering well. That's what we'd heard from Camilla, the Queen, who had been carrying on with her public duties as normal. On Friday, in fact, opening a cancer support centre at the Royal Free Hospital in London. We understand that his diagnosis at that point was known to her, but that she took the decision to go on with it anyway. And I think that that is absolutely critical and has really been the tone of this announcement from the palace, rare as it is, unexpected as it's come, that they want to continue so far as they can with business as usual. And it's interesting, isn't it, that Queen Camilla, despite having visited the King regularly during his 3-night stay in hospital for that benign enlarged prostate, is saying that she will go on with her regular public engagements, despite, of course, wanting to be a support for him. Now, there is a balance here, isn't there, between the privacy that the King should expect, as would any other person, when it comes to health conditions and his health condition in particular, and the public's need to know, because he is, after all, the head of state. And we're told that he decided to go public with this news because he wanted to prevent speculation about it, but also because he wanted to offer his support and solidarity to others who are going through cancer. We are told by the palace that he felt great encouragement when he shared the news about his prostate enlargement condition, that many men had gone to websites on the NHS and were encouraged to go and get checked, and that he wanted to do something similar with this. Having said that, we will not be hearing exactly what kind of cancer he has, aside that it is not prostate cancer, and we shouldn't expect regular updates on his health. Other senior royals will step up when they can, including Prince William, and the message really from here is that as far as they're possible, business will continue as usual, with the King stepping back for a while.
All right, Rachel Younger at Buckingham Palace, thank you. Now, when the King announced that he was having treatment for an enlarged prostate, the NHS saw a big increase in the number of people searching for information. We can speak now to Professor Pat Price, who is a leading clinical oncologist and co-founder of the Catch Up with Cancer campaign. Professor Price, thank you so much for joining us this evening. What do you make of the King being so honest about his diagnosis?
I think that's his amazing news, really. Over the years, people would have just not talked about it. The fact that he's opened up and shared this, it is very important. What he wants to do is start that conversation so people can have that discussion and be open about cancer and be optimistic. All those signs we're hearing are quite positive. And remember, half of people who are diagnosed with cancer do survive 10 years. So I think every reason to be optimistic, and good for him.
Indeed, good for him. But how much of a difference does it make when people in the public eye are straightforward and honest about what's going on?
I think it's so important for those people who have got cancer. 1 in 2 of us will get cancer. And to know this is shared by so many people. And now he is like all the other people, he has got a cancer diagnosis, but it's important he's leading the way in starting that conversation. And also, this is one that was clearly found when they weren't looking for it. It was an incidental finding. And so that is very good news, because we know that the earliest we can diagnose cancer, then the more likely we are to cure it. So he's been very good to share this, and hopefully all will be well.
Yeah, indeed. It is interesting, isn't it, that it was only discovered because he was undergoing treatment for what turned out to be a benign prostate condition, but it was discovered during that treatment, or during that exploratory treatment.
Yes, that's right. And obviously, when you're having these exploratory treatments, other areas in the pelvis or elsewhere are checked over. And this obviously was found before he had any symptoms of that, which is just the right time to find cancer, when it's very early.
Professor Pat Price, thank you so much for your time this evening. Professor Pat Price of the Catch Up with Cancer campaign. Well, with me in the studio, as I know, is our royal editor, Chris Shipp, and also the royal author and the King's biographer, Catherine Mayer. Just time for a final discussion about the situation we find ourselves in. 9 months after his coronation, the King is effectively stepping back, not stepping down, we know, but stepping back. It is, no matter what the palace says, it is significant, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, and we've got to remember that, the royal family is an institution. It's also a family as well. So you've got to take those two parts, haven't you? And the institutional part kind of continues. We're told that Prince William will step up. I kind of, wonder about the impact on him. He's just actually seen his wife go through some very major surgery that had her in hospital for 13 nights. He took some time off his scheduled duties to look after the children and also help her into the rehabilitation. We're told he's coming back to work on Wednesday, and that won't change. I'm told he's okay, but the King has spoken to both his sons, and now Harry's coming home as well. And look, we've spoken many times. Look at the Christmas pictures you're looking at there in Sandringham. Harry and Meghan were not there, either because they weren't invited or they didn't want to come. Prince Harry, I'm now told, is coming over soon. The emphasis on the soon, and he's not coming with Meghan and the two children. They're staying in Montecito in California for schooling reasons, I'm told. But Harry coming over to see his father after everything that's been said and discussed and written in those books and displayed on those Netflix programs. This is a family that's now coming together in some quite difficult times for the King medically.
Catherine.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is perhaps also an opportunity in that sense, because there was always the feeling that Harry had painted himself into a corner and that this kind of rapprochement was going to be very difficult. Now there's an opportunity. But I also keep thinking, very recently we were discussing about Charles's plans to slim down the royal family on accession. And of course, what we're now seeing is this huge pressure, because we went from having 18 working royals to there now actually being very few people who are in the front line of that job.
We're down to sort of 4 and 2 households. We used to have Buckingham Palace, Clarence House, Kensington Palace. We've now got Buckingham Palace, Kensington Palace, 4 senior royals, 2 of whom are now out of action.
Yeah, for the time being. And actually, we were talking about, cancer being no respecter of royalty. In those shots of Christmas we saw at Sandringham, of course, in the shot was also the Duchess of York, who's also been diagnosed with cancer. Now, she's obviously not a front line royal anymore, but it is a family, isn't it, going through what so many families are going through across the nation.
And we're told that the King personally told his 3 siblings, so Princess Anne, Prince Edward and Prince Andrew as well, and also his 2 children, Harry and William. And you're right, it's a family that's having to pull together in some very difficult and challenging moments for them.
Catherine, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're also seeing going on is they are a family like any other, going through what other families do, but they're also relentlessly in the public eye. The pressures of having to go through all of this. We're talking about how much information he's releasing. I mean, imagine getting that kind of diagnosis and then having strategic discussions about, do I say this? Do I say that? And in a difficult political context as well, because it's great, the thing of cancer awareness, but also we're in a situation where people are on huge waiting lists for cancer treatment. So this story will go in different directions. They will be very aware of that. And so it's a really difficult personal circumstance, but also difficult strategically and in terms of the messaging.
And you were saying earlier on, yes, there is openness, but it's not full openness, because of course there is a need to respect his privacy, and we don't know what cancer it is. We just know it's not prostate.
That's the difficult balance. And of course, it's not our job to go trying to find out which hospital he's being treated in. It's not our job to try and speculate on what kind of cancer they may have found when they did this prostate operation last week, other than we've been told he's got cancer and he's undergoing treatment as an outpatient, and that's all we're told for the time being.
OK, Chris Shipp and Catherine Mayer, thank you so much. And that brings this special coverage to a close this evening. Buckingham Palace announced earlier this evening that the King has cancer and that he has already started treatment. Now, we don't know what type of cancer it is, as we said, but we have been told it is not prostate cancer. It was picked up when the King underwent a procedure for an enlarged prostate that turned out to be benign. The King will now take a step back from his public royal duties while he is undergoing treatment. But he says he is determined to be back as soon as possible. So stepping back, definitely not stepping down. We'll have more reaction at 10, followed by the news from where you are. And you can keep up to date with the latest on ITVX and at itv.com/news. From me and the evening news team, bye-bye.
Today, expect to see some heavy downpours all over the country. Heinz Beans sponsors ITV National Weather.